We're theme park families.
Theme park families.
We're theme park families.
Won't you join us now?
We're theme park families.
Thanks for joining us, we aim to please.
If roller coasters got you weak in the knees,
We're theme park families.
if you wanna find the best dessert or
Take a potty break with privacy,
find a coaster that is tame for little ones,
or one to make you scream.
we're theme park families.
Everybody's having bad babies.
Rescuing you all from life's luxuries.
We're theme park families.
We're theme park families.
Press the space bar. Yeah.
Yay!
Hi everybody, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Adam.
I don't think so.
You totally got me.
That was pretty funny, right? You really just did say I'm Adam.
Yes, I did.
I didn't think I'd be sure you up that way.
You did.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Andrew.
And thanks so much for joining us for this episode 12 of Theme Park Families. We would have recorded last week. That was our intention, to record something like last Wednesday or Thursday. But what was the problem last week?
You had no voice. I thought I could just do one whole by myself.
You really probably should have.
Yeah.
Yeah. As awful as it is being a teacher with no voice, being a podcaster with no voice might actually be worse. At least I could type on my whiteboard what I wanted my students to do, but a little bit harder on a podcast. Miming at a microphone wouldn't have been that effective, but
No.
I guess you could have handled the whole thing by yourself, right?
You could have.
So really excited for this episode. It's one that we've wanted to do for a while. It's jam-packed with a lot of good stuff for this show. But buddy, how is it possible that we've recorded a show about Disney World and yet we haven't recorded a show about Ohio?
Disney World's more popular.
But which one have we been to more?
Let's see. Disney World here. Cedar Point, like 2 times. Yeah, no, not Disney World.
Not
Cedar
Disney.
Point.
Cedar Point. Well,
And Kings.
Island.
Yes.
Well, we're now one little calendar a month away, about 4 weeks from this coming weekend, from the opening dates of some parks, which is very, very exciting. Are you excited?
I'm excited and kind of nervous because I'm 53.
Yeah. You're 53, like, without shoes. So with shoes,
I'll be 52.
no, you don't get shorter if you put on shoes.
I'll be 54.
Oh my gosh. How are you at math?
I don't know.
Your favorite subject, right?
Nope.
All right. Well, maybe we can give you some Skelegro, and we'll get you to 54 inches. Do you know what Skelegro is yet?
Not a clue.
All right. We haven't gotten to that Harry Potter
Okay.
book yet. So, yeah, we'll get there eventually. So that leads us to today's show, where we'll be discussing Andrew's updated top 10 coaster list, which changed from our first couple of shows in 2017. That was like the second episode, I think, that we talked about your top 10 coasters. And since you did so much in that year after 2017, that's changed a lot. So we'll find out, doing all those 52-inch coasters, how radically your top 10 list changed from there. We'll also be discussing an obscure bit from an old David Letterman show from years and years ago that coaster enthusiasts will be excited to hear. I never heard anyone talk about it in the coaster enthusiast groups, so it'll be interesting to see if anyone remembers this. Do you even know who David Letterman is, Rue?
Doesn't he have a show and there's like some comedy stuff?
Yeah, he sort of retired, but now he has an interview show, and he has a giant gray beard, looking very different than he did. We'll also be discussing our second TPF Quest, our interactive question about favorite coasters at Cedar Point that people came in droves for, answering in huge numbers. Connected to that, we'll be briefly discussing some of the highlights from our Kings Island and Cedar Point trips from last year. Now, Cedar Point is such a
Big park.
very popular popular park that so many people love. The fanboys, as they're described at Cedar Point, can get to a whole nother level.
We've never seen or heard Cedar Point fanboys, but they're out there.
That's so we hear, and hopefully we won't offend anyone in this episode. You got to be very careful about what you say.
You can't offend Cedar Point. They're like top dog, bro.
Well, okay, so you can't offend them, no matter what we say. Even if we said every coaster's garbage. Nope, they're top dog. It doesn't matter. All right, so we're scot-free. It doesn't matter what we say.
Yes.
Woohoo! Thanks for letting us off the hook. Sweet. Well, we've got a full show for you today, so let's get it started with Andrew's news.
If not riding coasters will give you the blues, it's Andrew's news.
All right, number one.
Exciting news from two Cedar Fair parks as Kings Dominion received their 2 new Twisted Timber trains and Cedar Point received their lift hill motor and gearbox.
All right, so very cool that they have these sort of rustic looking light green and powder blue trucks, very similar to Mystic Timbers a little bit.
Yeah, they look really cool.
Yeah, so that is pretty neat, and it just looks great. They're really nailing the theming. I think that's pretty cool.
The last 2 pieces of Twisted Timbers was installed on February 17th. The Railblazer trains at California's Great America were also delivered.
All right, so I just showed you the picture of those.
Yes.
What did you think?
Those look like trains.
They are trains.
Oh, that explains a lot. They look really cool.
Super modern. And it's so weird to see them that it's one seat. And the colors are awesome. They've got that gray, orange, and lime green. Kind of a cool modern combination. Yeah. It looks like there's
it looks weird to see that each row is just one person.
That's it. One person per car. And it looks like there's sort of a soft harness that comes over the shoulders and then a lap bar. So it'll be interesting to see how comfortable those are. So with a very bright track and those cool looking trains, it's just going to be an amazing looking ride. Can't wait to see them in person, potentially in August.
Maybe.
Okay, number 2.
Six Flags Over Georgia announced that they will be running the Great American Scream Machine backwards beginning March 10th for a limited time.
So, we went there, was that last year? Last summer or 2?
Last summer.
Right, we went and saw Goliath from Ride This One, as that's his home park, and so we were there for 2 days. And what did you think of Great American Scream Machine when we did it?
I liked it. It wasn't that rough. It goes over the lake, and I like it. I just can't see how a wooden coaster and backwards meet. They don't really connect. I mean, I get Batman and backwards because that's not as rough.
Ooh, well, it is intense. Well, so think about last year. Georgia Cyclone or Great American Scream Machine, which did you think was rougher?
I didn't really think they were that rough.
That either of them were?
No.
Okay.
You thought Georgia Cyclone was really rough.
Yeah, and not rattly rough, banging rough. That there were some potholes in the tracks. Great American Scream Machine I really liked. I know a lot of people don't like it at all. I thought it was fine. But riding it backwards, I just don't see how that would be fun. A lot of people talk, and I'm sure you've heard it before too, talked about times when the Racer, or Racer 75 as it's now known, had at least one side running backwards at times. Have you heard that before that they did?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so those did. And those are pretty rough too. I don't know. A rougher wooden coaster going backwards, it seems a bit strange to me. I would do it, but I just don't know if it would be something that I would love to do.
It could be a real hit. You never know.
Yeah, we'll see. And especially if they did track work and it's that much smoother. But something different is always a good thing until it's a bad thing. So I would try it. Yeah, so that sounds interesting. Yeah, number 3.
A new amusement park will be opening in Branson, Missouri this May called America's Fun Park, themed after a state fair midway. The owners want to change the theme of the park on Branson's famous strip, according to the season, with a unique Halloween and Christmas feel. At those times, built on 9 acres, the free entrance park will cost $20 for adults and $14 for kids for ride armbands.
All right, so that's kind of interesting. I always think it's exciting to hear about any new park opening in America.
I think this park is going to be like one of the smaller parks, but it's kind of weird for a new park to open right next to Silver Dollar City because that's a really big park, so not many people will be there, and many more people will be at Silver Dollar City. So it would be okay if they could move it somewhere else in Missouri, but I don't find that happening.
It's an interesting point. I think it makes a little more sense to at least build a smaller park compared to if someone went to Branson and tried to build a larger park like a Silver Dollar City, then that kind of competition would be crazy. This at least is different enough that some people who are just doing...
Like a tourist.
Yeah, exactly. Touristy things in Branson. I think Branson, even though when we went there with Slater, we didn't actually go into Branson, so we didn't really see what it was like to compare it to Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, that whole area. So I think there are plenty of people who do go to Branson for other touristy things like the country music houses that might not go to Silver Dollar City. So this would be a good thing to go for potentially 3 hours and spend $14 for kids, something like that, do all the rides, and that's it. Whereas Silver Dollar City is potentially a 2-3 day thing. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of credits they have in terms of if they have a couple of smaller coasters. But for that meetup, the Coaster Radio meetup in July, I would go check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's opening in May, so by July they'll have a lot of the problems solved and smooth things out, and it should be pretty good. Adding to that, they have a decent schedule where they open, I think, around 10 a.m. and then are open till like 9, 10 at night.
Oh, wow.
So they have a pretty long operating schedule, so I think that should help it. The likelihood in your lifetime of any large, brand new parks opening up in America, I think is so slight. There are so few markets that will demand a huge new park, like a Six Flags or a Cedar Fair Park. So I think we have to take whatever kind of new, smaller park we can get, like Alabama and the park that opened there, and the new park that's going to be opening in Texas over the next few years. So any kind of park, I welcome its opening. So last year was only our second year of having Cedar Fair Platinum Passes, and we went to Kings Island and Cedar Point about 2 to 3 times last year. We really like to go to Cedar Point in May and late August. Those are our ideal times when crowds are a little bit lighter. It has to be on everyone's short list of best parks due to quality and quantity of rides, as well as the historical importance of the park. But before we talk about our experience from the park, let's hear what other people had to say about it with our second TPF Quest on what is your favorite coaster at Cedar Point and why. People really came out in terrific numbers, as this park means so much to so many. Let's start it off with our Twitter account first, at Theme Park Fam, and it starts off with
Adam at Fire King 492. And he states, my favorite coaster at Cedar Point is Top Thrill Dragster because it is the tallest and fastest coaster I have been on, and you get a great but quick view of the surrounding area.
That's true. You really got to look quickly. You're only up there for a couple of seconds. Not a lot of time to look around, but I'd say that's one of the things that it has over King de Ka.
Yeah,
is that view of all the water.
But when you get up there, it's a pretty view. You could look around when you're still going up, and you can look when you're going down. So, yeah.
Next up, we had at WD Words, who stated, my favorite is Gatekeeper. Such a smooth ride and a great view of the park. I have a sentimental love with Top Thrill. My first ride ever got a rollback, and we were lucky enough to make it over the second try. Haven't had a rollback since. CP is such a great quality local park. And so even though she is a Walt Disney World lover and writes about Walt Disney World a lot, Cedar Point is her local amusement park. And that's kind of interesting. And can you imagine that? Your first Top Thrill Dragster ride and you got a rollback. How crazy would that be?
Yep.
What do you think? Do you think we'll ever get one?
With Theme Park Family luck.
Okay, so we'll have some Theme Park Family luck, I hope. So, interesting, Gatekeeper. We'll talk about Gatekeeper later. Smooth ride and a great view of the park. It's hard to argue with either of those things, right?
Yeah, you can't argue with that.
Very smooth and a nice spot right in the front there.
Next we have Brian at AMS Tech Guy. Wow, CP, so many coasters. So many memories. MF got me to go to Cedar Point for its opening year because I've always been a coaster fan. Raptor was my first coaster that I rode at Cedar Point. I rode Top Thrill Dragster on opening day and waited over 4 hours, and it was freezing cold out.
4 hours for Top Thrill Dragster.
4 hours for 17 seconds.
In May, where you know it's going to be cold at that point, so it's pretty crazy. So we had a lot of things to say there. Millennium Force opening year, and hard to imagine that that line would have been much less than 4 hours. Raptor the first, and then Top Thrill Dragster as well. So I asked him to pick a favorite, and a lot of people did this. It's such a special park to a lot of people that a lot of people on the multiple forums stated, I like this, and this, and then they pick 5, and it's like, it's tough sometimes with a question like this to pick just one. But he eventually did say, my favorite coaster would be Raptor because I was a big fan of B&M back in the day, and I still am. Also, Raptor has always had the best ride ops. Also, I missed the DJ in the Raptor queue. And I saw that, and I was like, what? DJ in the Raptor queue? Have you ever heard about this?
No.
So that's what I said. DJ in the queue? What? Were there like glow sticks and fog machines and people got their dance on, started and broke out their cardboard and started flowing? I was wondering what was up with that. And he said, yeah, that Cedar Point DJs were a thing. Now, a lot of you old school Cedar Point fans would know about this, but we've only been there for 2 years. We never heard about this. So apparently he said Magnum, Millennium Force, Mantis, and Raptor all had them. Pretty crazy to hear.
I know where the Millennium Force one is. Isn't that the booth where it has like that blue light when you come up and it's kind of boarded off? In
the queue there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Good memory, dude. That makes a lot of sense that would have been there. Hopefully we'll meet some people there next year that'll let us know about some of those details because I think that's awesome and so cool to hear.
Yeah.
So interesting choice with Raptor. Raptor is one of those weird rides that is so controversial. There's a whole online thing about Raptor with Andy and Dan the t-shirt guy from CoasterNet Uncut and Ann Sue and a lot of others who have this Raptor discussion. It's like a meme that's gone on for years about some people absolutely loving Raptor, some people absolutely hating Raptor, favorite invert for some, least favorite for others. It's a very bizarre thing. I'm not going to say anything about that. I'm going to let you form your own opinion when you ride it finally in a couple of months, and we'll see what you think about it. So our first vote for Raptor. Then from our Facebook page at Theme Park Fam, we had a number of people who responded there, including Siobhan A, who stated, my favorite ride is Millennium Force. It is such an awesome coaster with great airtime and fun overbank turns. And that's an interesting response. Airtime is one of the things a lot of people discuss with that ride. Some people love the airtime and some people say it's underwhelming. What's your favorite airtime moment on Millennium Force?
My favorite airtime moment is going into that second bank turn. It's right after you go through the first tunnel and then you go up and see a good view of the park.
So that first big hill you like. Okay.
And you can see their big shoot the chutes ride.
Yeah.
And then, that's probably my favorite airtime.
And you like it better in the back of Millennium Force, right?
Yes.
Yeah. My favorite airtime moment is the smallest airtime hill. I love that station hill. It's so small, but that's such a fun little element. That little pop of air you get there. Kind of love it. But the overbank turns are so much fun. And the great thing about the overbank turns is it's the first and last one. That first huge one after the drop is great. And then that last one heading into the station. That last overbank there is such a cool ride. That first time I did it, I remember loving that turn because it is still so fast at such a late point of the ride.
Next, Joe A. Mine is Top Thrill Dragster. Sure, it's only 17 seconds long, but it's the best 17 seconds I've ever experienced on a roller coaster. That being said, it's only the greatest in the front seat. Anywhere else, and you don't get nearly the same experience. And I fully expect my favorite to change once the convention opens.
A lot of people are saying that whatever their favorite is right now, that might change in 2018. He said the front row in Top Thrill is the best. Now, we'll talk about our experience with Top Thrill, and hopefully you do get that view eventually. So another vote for Top Thrill Dragster. Thanks, Joe. Next up, we had Adam Force. Kind of an interesting last name. With a last name like that, what do you think his favorite ride's going to be?
Force. Millennium Force.
That he changed his last name. He said, Millennium Force will reach my 15,000th lifetime ride on it this season. What? Can you imagine doing 15,000 rides on one coaster?
I would be okay with that. Because then, I could close my eyes and say, oh, there's the second big bank turn coming up. Oh, and we're going around the corner right now. Millennium Force is a really good coaster, so, I wouldn't even care if I rode it 100,000 times. famous.
It's interesting, the segments of the coaster fandom who have that. We know someone who is a lightning racer extraordinaire who rides that a ton of times. I'm familiar with someone who is the Sky Rush girl who has done that thousands of times. And the famous one, Mean Streak.
Mean Streak Henry.
Yep. And so is he going to become Steel
Vengeance Henry?
It's going to be interesting. I have no idea what his feelings were about it, but yeah, kind of interesting how some people can ride a single ride that many times. We've done El Toro by now, probably less than 100 times. We might have done
100.
Yeah, maybe 70, 80, somewhere in there, and I feel like I know that coaster really well.
Yeah, I can
multiply that by hundreds. I just can't even imagine.
Next, E&B. For me, it's close between Millennium Force for the speed, Raptor for the G-forces and inversions, Magnum for the airtime, and Gemini when it's racing for the head choppers and the fun of racing another train.
So another one of those non-committal answers, a tough one as there are so many different ones he likes for different things. That seemed like a good answer. That there are some elements he likes from all of them, so hard to choose. He did say that it was much easier to choose his least favorite coaster, to which I said Corkscrew, and he said, yes, sir. I think a lot of people might feel that way. And his relative Cheryl said Ian knows Cedar Point like the back of his hand. He's been going there since he was a baby, and he worked there for 3 years too. He is my riding partner. My favorite rides are Millennium Force, Raptor, and Gatekeeper. So Cheryl as well had some trouble committing to one. And she went on to say, the Millennium Force was topped off on my dad's birthday in 2000. I will never forget that. So that's a really cool timing that was done. And it was one of his favorite rides. A bunch of rides that the Barons like. They can't settle on one. And I can understand that. Next up, we had a family friend, Kim, who we've been to Cedar Point with a few times, who stated, for me, it's close between Top Thrill for speed, hydraulic launch, height, and 90-degree drop, and Millennium Force for the speed, height, 80-degree drop, length, and smooth ride. I choose Millennium Force as my favorite because it's longer, so there's more time to enjoy it, although Maverick has grown on me the last couple years, but it won't beat the other two. Alright, so another vote for Millennium Force. And I think that length is one of the reasons why a lot of people might choose that over a couple of the other rides that they like equally. Just the fact that it lasts longer, that's understandable. So thanks for that, Kim.
Next, Paul Z. Raptor holds a special place in my heart because not only was it the first big coaster I rode, but also the first big coaster I ever worked. I worked at Cedar Point all through college and wouldn't trade those experiences for the world. Raptor was exciting for me because as a kid, it was daunting and scary riding, something that I had never had the experience of before. As an adult, it was exciting getting to work there and relive a little bit of my childhood. I've moved on with my life, but I still go back and visit every year because I enjoy what a wonder both the park and Raptor are. For me, Raptor is symbolic of two great moments in my life that has a personal sense of happiness I hold very dearly. Sure, new and exciting rides come out all the time, but I don't have the history with them. Every ride on Raptor is exciting for me, not only because it's thrilling, but also because every twist and turn comes with a fond memory.
How cool is that to have those kind of stories behind it? We've heard from a couple of former employees, and that connection to it, that it was one of his first big rides, and that it was a ride he worked on, just makes it that much more special. Raptor really looked great last year with that paint job. It really pops with that nice bright green. I've loved the way Raptor looked last year. Great to have that emotional connection to it. Very cool to hear, Paul. Next up, we had Josh H., who stated, for me, it's a toss-up between Millennium Force and Maverick. Millennium Force has the heights and the view. Maverick is great for the speed, turns, and first drop. So yet again, another one that's hard to pick. And they're both great rides. I don't blame someone for not being able to choose between Millennium and Maverick. Both of them do what they do really well, and they're both so different. So it makes sense to like both of them equally.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do we get to choose our favorite in the end?
Yes. Yeah, you'll have a voice. Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Keep going.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Next, we have Crazy Aunt Sue from Coaster Radio fame and Daily T-shirt guys. And I absolutely love Millennium Force. It's my top 10. Maverick was one I used to dislike, but ever since they changed to the updated restraints, I like it much better. I'd have to say, I really like Gatekeeper too. I know, lots of people think it's forceless. Whatevs. I like its gracefulness. And y'all know how I feel about Raptor.
Oh, Aunt Sue getting southern on us, y'all.
Y'all.
Yeah, so she's in that Raptor group of hates it, painful. That's the group she is in, famously famous for.
What about Dan? What is he?
Oh, yeah, he's in that group too.
Oh, he hates Raptor?
He I don't think he likes Raptor too much. But interesting, another Millennium Force. And interesting, the first one to bring up the restraint change.
Yes.
The hard restraints on Maverick, a lot of people hated.
We never got to ride with the hard restraints, right?
Yeah, no, all that changed, including the Hershey Park coasters.
Skyrush?
And Fahrenheit also had the hard ones as well. Well, you haven't done those yet, but you will eventually. And so everyone praises those softer restraints. So a lot of people are liking Maverick more and more as time goes on. Thanks, Aunt Sue, for that. Next up, we had Mark K, who said, for me, it has to be Millennium Force. It's one of the only coasters that made my heart beat like I was 10 years old again. You just can't beat that feeling of fear and excitement as you're going up the lift hill. And I can totally relate to that. For people who Millennium Force is their first Giga coaster, that lift hill is pretty tall for your first one.
When we were watching videos when I was 7...
Six. Yeah, 6.
Like, I got really nervous. Like, this is a whole different thing. When I ride this, I'm going to be like, geez, this is good. But no, like now I love it. And that will be like the first ride I ride almost every time I go to Cedar Point.
Thinking of it, before Millennium Force, the tallest coaster you ever read was probably Steel Force, I would imagine.
Steel Force,
as that was your first hyper, because that's 48 inches. I think that was your first. And my guess is that first time we went to Cedar Point, 2 years ago, we definitely did Millennium Force before Magnum. That was the first coaster we did. So that is pretty intimidating, that first hill.
So yeah, it's kind of in history with us too, so...
Oh, absolutely.
Next, Trevor T. My favorite one that I've seen from the POV is the Cedar Creek Mine Ride. I think the elements are pretty cool. Oh my gosh.
That's an interesting choice. So Trevor, who's never been to Cedar Point, looked at all the POVs and thought Cedar Creek Mine Ride looked like...
Maybe he's just that guy that doesn't like fast and intense and most airtime. Like, I totally respect that if he does.
And it goes over the water.
Yeah, water. And you see fishies.
And it's Arrow.
And it's Arrow. No, who doesn't like Arrow?
It's got multiple lift hills.
Yes, it has 2 lift hills.
Have you actually done it twice or...
Twice, yeah.
Yeah. I've only done it once ever. You did it twice because you went with some other people that I didn't do it with. So hopefully Trevor will be able to get there at some point and decide in real life if Cedar Creek Mine Ride is the best ride there. Next up, we had Trent L. And Trent said, my favorite coaster at the point is one that isn't many people's favorites. It's Wicked Twister. What? I love the launch and the airtime, and it's always my first and last coaster of the day. To which I said, yeah, I love the back row of those impulse coasters. Those are my favorite seats. And he said he likes the front, where you get pushed up the front spike, that he liked that feeling. Which seat did you like best on those kind of coasters?
I don't really have an opinion because I'm not crazy for those.
Oh, okay.
It's really okay anywhere, but I wouldn't really prefer it anywhere. You both get a great ride if you do it in the front or back.
Okay.
In the middle is just...
You're right. Front or back, thoroughly agree with that. So an interesting choice, Trent, and I like that. People who don't necessarily pick the choices that you'd expect. Kind of a nice curveball.
Next, we have Robert C. Magnum XL 200 is my favorite roller coaster. It has the best location as it runs to the beach and through the water park. It has the best sounding chain lift. It has the coolest looking cars. The first drop is very intense in the back seat. I love the tunnels that make you put your raised hands down a little bit. Yeah, I do that too. The first 4 elements are each unique in shape and size, and the second half of the ride repeats the same hill over and over to great effect to a wonderful finale.
So Magnum, another one of those interesting rides, like Drew the intern from In the Loop, who states that Magnum is his absolute favorite. One of those rides that people either absolutely love or absolutely hate.
I don't love it or hate it.
You're kind of in the middle?
Yeah.
So you're an oddball that way too.
I think I know why this is for a couple of people, because it's been in their history for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good ride. And I agree with you, absolutely. Because whenever you are coming back on those hills in the tunnel, oh, you gotta put your hands down and brace for it. It's bumpy.
Okay, so to brace yourself, not because you're afraid you're going to hit your super long arms in the top of the tunnel. That's not it?
No.
Yeah. And it's interesting with Magnum. One of the last times I think we rode last year, it might have even been the last time we rode Magnum last year. Do you remember what was going on in the pool at the...
Oh, yeah, it's Jaws.
Yeah, it was one of those movies at the water park nights. Right after the water park ended, this had to have been around 8, 9 at night, and they were showing Jaws, and it was so cool going up the lift hill, and we could watch one of the scenes from Jaws. So that was kind of a neat experience, being able to see all the people in the water watching the movie. That was kind of neat. And it has one of the best views on the lift hill as well. And so a lot of people love it. It's historical significance. If in 1989 you were at Cedar Point, doing Magnum would have been like doing Millennium Force in 2000. To ride a hypercoaster for the first time, I'm sure it was very smooth for the time, and it was a great ride. A lot of people still love the airtime and feel it doesn't bother them. And so an interesting choice. And you hear a lot of people saying it's painful, and others saying they love the airtime. So an interesting choice there. Thanks, Robert. Next up, we had Mike T, who said Maverick, emphatically, exclamation point. High speeds, love the 2 inversions, super intense, and a fairly long ride. And that's true. It is a decent length ride with the 2 inversions. Tends to last a pretty long time. So a great choice there with Maverick.
Next, we have Robert D. Maverick. It was love at first ride. After that, I've spent a lot of hours riding it and obtaining so many memories that would take me a while to write. It's my sentimental favorite and the best steel coaster I've ever ridden.
And I think a lot of people have that right at the top of their steel list, if not at the top. So a very popular choice with Maverick. Next up, we had Jordan D, the muscle from the Carowinds meetup for Coaster Radio, who put Dan the T-shirt guy in the ground. You remember Jordan?
Yeah.
Yeah, good guy. Yep, big time Alabama fan. And he stated, until this past year, it was Millennium Force, but now I would have to say without a doubt, it's Maverick. I love the intensity and the tight turns. It's one of my favorites anywhere. And I think a lot of people feel that way, whether it's the restraint change or just the fact that it's the ride that doesn't really wow you at first. Whereas Top Thrill Dragster Millennium Force, the height and speed is just sort of a shock to the system. With Maverick, it's not anything extreme.
Riding, you have to get it into your system, man. Like, you just have to go with the flow.
And I think it grows on you, and I totally feel that way as well, that it is a ride that definitely grows with you over time. All right, so thanks, Jordan.
Next up, we have Tom Y. Maverick has been in my top 10 steel since my first ride in 2009. It's just an all-around great ride. I also believe it's my number 5th right now. I also really like Raptor and Top Thrill Dragster. Finally, I have rollbacks on both Maverick and Dragster. Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. You think of rollbacks on Top Thrill Dragster, which are famous, but Maverick, not as much. You don't think about it.
How do you get rollbacks on that?
Yeah, that's kind of weird, Maverick, right? A rollback has to be the first launch, right? Which isn't even really a launch. Yeah. It's kind of more of a coast. So, yeah, that's kind of weird, but you really never hear about Maverick rollbacks. So that's kind of neat to have both. So I think a lot of people are sort of jealous about that. Right? And someone else who has a number of rides that they like. Next up, Joseph J., who states, for me, it's Millennium Force. The ride up the first hill while enjoying the view of Lake Erie is hard to beat. Then the first drop in sheer speed for the rest of the ride is exhilarating. Amazing ride. And that's one of the things that impresses me, that it really never feels like it loses speed. That towards the end, it's still moving at such a great pace. And yes, absolutely, that view of Lake Erie is beautiful. So an excellent choice there.
Next, we have Dwayne B. Blue Streak will always hold a special place in my heart, as it was the first coaster my late father took me on when I was barely tall enough to ride. It would go on to become the first of many rides I got to operate while working at Cedar Point, and always be my favorite. The picture was taken during my first summer at Cedar Point. That's me sitting at controls back in '96. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Isn't that cool? Yeah, you haven't seen that yet. That's on our at Theme Park Fam at Facebook. And for his response, he has a picture of him sitting at the control booth, which is great, with shirts that now look a little bit retro from way back in the 90s. You don't remember the 90s too well, do you?
Let me see. No, I wasn't alive.
So another story, just like when we heard before with Raptor, where Dwayne with Blue Streak, his first ride that he did with his dad, and then again he had the opportunity to work it. So such a cool story. Love hearing those, and what a connection to a ride. That's great to hear. So our first vote for Blue Streak. Woo!
Yeah. Next we have Jody. Forget the rest. It is and will always be Raptor.
Nice and short to the point. And for Jo, as part of her Facebook name, she has the word Raptor in her parenthetical name. So it's very clear how much she loves Raptor.
She does?
She does.
I
When
don't
she
see
says
it.
forget the rest, it is, and it will always be Raptor. Yeah, that's pretty clear. Yeah, in her extended name, if you went to her profile, you would see she has Raptor. So, another vote for Raptor.
Next, Jim H. Maverick is my favorite. It has speed, twist, 2 launches, a tunnel launch, and oh, those curves booming.
Booming! No doubt. Especially with those water effects that boom, right? After the second
Yes.
launch, those water cannons are pretty cool.
You don't really see them, Mom.
Yeah, exactly. They're behind you once you're done. But that's more for the spectators, I think, who are waiting out on the bridge.
Watching.
And if the breeze is going in that
Yep,
direction, you
could
get wet.
get wet.
And the tunnel, one thing we didn't talk about with Maverick, the tunnel.
The
You
launch.
well,
launch
with
tunnel.
the launch tunnel, yeah. Do you remember what used to be in there? And I guess
Yeah, they're like stop signs and cactuses.
yeah, that there used to be
Theming.
that theming in there exactly. And it's sad that that kind of went. Boomin' Jim is the perfect way to describe that. Next up, Iva S, who stated Maverick! Exclamation point. It was the first roller coaster that my husband and I rode together when we were dating. It's also special to us because he proposed to me at the entrance of it. He even arranged for the ride crew to announce it and play the wedding march as we got onto the ride. And Andrew, you can see the picture right there. It looks like it's really early in the season, right? It doesn't look like there are leaves on the trees yet.
There's nobody there, almost nobody.
And look, you can see him on his knee. That you can look at Theme Park Fam 2 and see that in the response as he's on his knee. That's true, there's no one around. We're standing right in front of the Maverick sign, and it's just so sweet. And I went on to say, we didn't have a coaster-themed wedding. Our pastor did talk about our love for coasters during the ceremony, but we did have a coaster moon where we visited Cedar Point, Carowinds, and Kings Island on our way to our cruise. What do you think? Do you think you might propose to your future wife at a
Sure.
at a roller coaster? Which one would you do it at?
That'd be kind of strange. Well, there's not gonna... When I get older, a lot of coasters that we know now won't be there anymore.
So you're not thinking of getting married anytime soon?
No.
All right, fine. Understandable. All right. So, Ivis, thank you so much for sending that in. That's such a sweet story, and Maverick should win the whole thing just because of that. Proposing right there. Oh, melts my heart. I love it.
Doesn't.
And lastly, we had Brianna S., who is famous for Hershey Park and riding Lightning Lacer. Lightning Lacer. I just said Lightning Lacer.
Lightning Lacer.
And next we had Brianna S., who is famous at Hershey Park for riding Lightning Racer tons of times. And she had a very interesting favorite coaster at Cedar
Let
Point.
me guess, it's going to be a wooden coaster.
It's going to be a wooden coaster. Very good. Yes!
Yes!
All right. But it's a wooden coaster that we haven't heard of someone mention yet as their favorite.
Mean Streak.
Yes!
Let's go!
Yes, let's go. Exactly, Dude Perfect. Is that what that's from? Right?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. So she loved Mean Streak, rode it hundreds or thousands or lots of times. And part of her was definitely a little sad, she said, when they announced it was going to be RMC. Not that she's against the RMC, but she loved Mean Streak for some reason. I guess.
I didn't hate it.
Yeah, it's fine.
It wasn't as bad as people said it was.
Yeah, in terms of roughness, I just don't know if it did great things. It looks beautiful.
It's a historic site, but now,
Yeah, I mean, at the time, it was a record breaker, and it's beautiful to look at. Airtime was kind of limited, but it was an interesting ride, and all the wood interaction throughout the ride was interesting. So we have one vote for Mean Streak, so very interesting, Brianna. Yes. And then we had 3 people who sent in MP3s to our Google email address, themeparkfamilies@gmail.com. And so let's have a listen and see what they had to say.
Good evening, theme park families. Hello, Adam and Andrew. This is Mark Flager from Columbus, Ohio. First, guys, a huge thanks to both of you for the topic of favorite coaster, or in my case, coasters, at Cedar Point. You really struck a chord with me on this, as Cedar Point has been a part of my life since the age of 3. I started going in 1974 and riding kiddie rides, and then later advancing on to the big rides. I could talk about Cedar Point all night, you guys, but podcasts are limited to an hour, about an hour and a half generally. And I don't want to hog all that time. So let's jump 6 years ahead to 1980. I was 9 years old and I decided it was time to ride my first major coaster. I could have ridden Gemini, Corkscrew, Wildcat, and what did I choose? Blue Streak. So I rode this thing at nighttime, close to closing time, as Blue Streak was our family's first and last coaster of the day in those earlier days. I sat with my dad. Blue Streak was still operating as a manual coaster in those days, so it had a manual brake and traditional lap bars, which you pushed forward and pulled down to lock. We called them buzz bars. We can imagine how terrifying this ride was for me at the age of 9 and not being able to see what was going on. Going down the first hill of 78 feet and then over a little bunny hill resulted in me almost standing up the entire ride. Not to mention my father doing his best to hold me in. I don't remember the Blue Streak having seatbelts in those days. I think what makes this ride special to me is having been able to ride during its manual years and experiencing a coaster that operates manual as opposed to electric or automatic. I guess I also enjoy how rough this ride is. I still punish myself and go for the last seat, as it truly still is the roughest ride on the coaster train. And I also think what makes this ride special is the cupola, or the roof decoration over the top of the first hill. Really gives this roller coaster some character. Millennium Force. Need I say more? The two elements for me that make this a phenomenal coaster are the first drop at 80 degrees and at a speed of 92 miles an hour, and the other element being going over the third hill after the first tunnel, which just provides immaculate airtime. Those two elements and the sheer smoothness of this ride make it a crowd pleaser every year, and that's still the reason you wait roughly an hour to get on. Maverick, a great backseat ride. The horseshoe style first drop into a right turn is just amazing. The ride is very sleek and quick. You have to relax on this ride and go with the track pattern. If you tense up, believe me, you will pay for it. I learned how to relax on this ride during its second season in 2008, and it helped. This ride is not for everyone, though. I remember being on this ride one time and saw too many kids coming out this ride in tears because they thought they would like it and ended up being shell shocked, as it was probably their first coaster. For me, it's just a fun ride. I guess if I had to choose a favorite part of it, it's going through the 2 loops and into the second launch underneath the loading station. So there you have it, my favorite 3 coasters at Cedar Point. Thanks again for sharing this topic, and I hope to meet you guys very soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mark, for sending that in. Now, I noticed that he has his sentimental favorite, Blue Streak. That's another one of those. Really cool. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear, including the fact that it was a manual brake back then.
Yes, I didn't even know Gemini was that old.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was recently new.
No, it's not ancient. It's not like...
I know, it's like...
60s, I think?
40? Is it 40 years old? Like,
a little bit older than that, I think.
Oh.
But around there, a little bit older than that. So it's not super old like the Wild one.
No.
Or some of the others, like the one at Seabreeze, Jackrabbit. But it is, for Cedar Point, an older one.
Yes.
Interesting to hear about the buzz bars and how much more exciting that would have been not being stapled in with a seatbelt. So that's kind of cool. Good advice with Maverick, relaxing. Dan the T-shirt guy has that exact same philosophy with riding the Voyage. That if you tense up and fight against its intensity at Holiday World, that's when it could be a little bit more painful. So that just relaxing and going with it makes it a better experience. And then Millennium Force, exactly. That speed over 90 miles per hour just makes that ride. So thanks for sending that in, Mark. Hearing about your relationship to the park from 3 years old all the way back then, that you've been able to go there for that many years. It's so cool hearing stories like that. And we hope to see you in the park as well. Next up, we'll hear from David.
Hey, theme park families, this is David from Southern Ohio, and I wanted to share with you one of my favorite roller coaster memories from Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. I grew up just south of Detroit, Michigan, and can remember taking frequent trips to Cedar Point as a child. One of my favorite roller coaster memories is my first big boy roller coaster experience. It was riding the Gemini with my aunt and my cousin. Sadly, my aunt passed away a few years ago from breast cancer. But thankfully, every time I visit Cedar Point, I can look at Gemini and I can ride it and I can remember the good times and memories, and it feels like she's still with us. So just remember that the memories that you make at theme parks can last a lifetime and can be very, very good things overall. Thanks, theme park families. Your podcast is awesome. I enjoy every new episode. Keep up the good work and ride on.
So I really like it, David. Have you put in a good theme moral to your recording? Yeah.
What a powerful story, David. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I think on our first episode, that's one of the first things that we discussed. The idea of our podcast, we wanted to be about all families. Not only ours, but yours as well. So hearing a story like that is just so powerful. We're sorry to hear about your aunt's passing, but to be able to go to that park and look at that ride and think of those memories that you had. And hopefully you're still able to go with your cousin and share those memories, that the two of you can go on and talk about her and remember those things. And 2 recordings in a row, we heard about my first big boy coaster. It's so special to hear. And while there might be bigger, faster, taller coasters, Gemini will always hold that special place in your heart. And thinking about Gemini twins in some way, you and your cousin can be Geminis that way, and connected to your aunt be Gemini twins connected in that way. So what a beautiful story. Thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, good central message, David.
And our last recording, we have the recent star of the latest Ride This One podcast episode, a good friend of the show. Let's hear from him now.
Hello, theme park families. This is Brian, and I just want to give you guys a call about your latest theme park families quest, about what my favorite coaster is at Cedar Point. I mean, I know they have some incredible coasters there. I've not yet been, I will say, I've not yet been on Valraven, but up to this point, on all the ones I've been on, I will have to say my favorite coaster there is Maverick. I mean, I know they have Millennium Force or Millennium Farce, depending on what show you listen to, but I still think that, you know, Maverick just has, I just love the elements of it. I love the launch. I love the style. And it happened to be, there is a sentimental factor. It was the first coaster that I did ride at Cedar Point on my first trip there. So, but yeah, I have to say, as much as pretty much, you know, you can throw a rock any which way. Not that I recommend that at a theme park, but throw a rock any direction. You're going to get a great coaster at Cedar Point. But if I did have to pick my favorite, and now this is not the best, this is my favorite, it will be, to this point, Maverick. Anyway, love the show, guys. Talk to you soon.
So another vote for Maverick, and you're lying. I remember you got thrown out just in 2017 alone, thrown out of 5 different parks for throwing rocks. You remember those?
Yeah. Yeah, but thanks a lot, Brian. Ooh, another Maverick. Maverick and Millennium Force is gonna...
So you had nothing to say about the rock throwing?
Oh, yeah.
No, you had nothing.
No.
Okay, all right. Where do you start with Brian? Co-podcaster of Civil Gore Podcast, which we love, executive producer of Coaster Radio, and rock thrower extraordinaire.
Yes.
It's pretty impressive. All right, so for him, first ride he ever did, maybe that left the impression.
Yeah.
But he loves Maverick, so a tight race that we have. So let's take a look at our totals here. As of right now, Maverick is in the lead by 1 over Millennium Force.
But we haven't done ourselves yet, so that could change.
And it's interesting after that. We've got so many that are spread out. Now, Valraven, how many votes were cast for Valraven?
Let me see. I'm counting.
Yeah. You can't see this on the podcast, but he's got his fingers out. He's going through them.
4, 6, 8. 0.
0! Man, not one person voted for Valraven. That's kind of odd. Great coaster, but I guess it just didn't resonate with anyone. In third place, we had Raptor with 4, and Top Thrill Dragster with 2, and Magnum with 2, Blue Streak with 2, Gemini with 2, and a couple of others with 1. I had a feeling it would come down to Maverick versus Millennium Force.
Yes.
And so we had Maverick with 9, Millennium Force with 8. So now it comes to, I guess, down to our 2 votes. So we'll have to discuss that a little bit after.
No, right now, please.
Let's take a break now. We'll play the David Letterman top 10 for them and then talk about our spot on the list after that.
See you in a bit. Bye.
So we'll be back in a second. Enjoy this old school clip from the David Letterman show that I don't think a lot of people know exists. See you on the other side. So, Paul, how are you doing over there?
Great, Dave. Anything exciting happened to you lately?
Funny enough that you should ask, Paul. Ladies and gentlemen, the other day, I'm waiting for a package to be delivered, and the doorbell rings.
What was being sent to you?
That's really not that important part of that story there, Paul. Can you let me finish? Good gosh.
Kinda sounds like you're embarrassed to let us know what was being delivered.
So anyway, I open the door, and there's a man at the door, and I'm looking for a package.
Hey-o!
Ha ha ha! Oh, you! But the strange thing is that he didn't have anything in his hands.
Oh, this story is fascinating.
So, I asked the guy what he wanted, and the guy says, "Do you want to buy a monkey?" Yeah, strange situation. Paul, how about some top 10?
Top 10. How about some top 10?
So, Paul, do you like roller coasters and theme parks?
Not really, Dave. I'm too short to ride anything. No, I'm not kidding. I'm tiny.
Well, that's truly sad. Want to buy a monkey?
No, not at all.
We actually have a guest, ladies and gentlemen, to help us with our top 10 list. Let's welcome our guest, a very famous comedian, to the stage.
How? Jeff Boxworthy here.
Come again?
Jeff Boxworthy.
Boxworthy? Like those fancy new rails that RMC makes? Got a little endorsement, did you? You do all those You Might Be a Redneck skits, right?
You're darn tootin'.
Yeah, that never gets old. Anyway, tonight's top 10, in honor of you, Jeff, who clearly deserves to be honored. The top 10 signs that you might be a GP. You know what GP stands for, Paul?
Come on, Dave. Of course. General public. Not a certified member of the coaster community.
Alright, let's do this. Number 10. If you walk up the exit ramp to get on a coaster, you might be a GP.
Oh, lordy. Who hasn't done that? I might be a member of the GP. Number 9.
If you walk around the entire park with your head in a map, you're definitely a GP.
Oh, everybody knows that you've got to do your research, right, ladies and gentlemen? Classic mistake. Hey, with your head in a map, you could walk into a monkey. Number 8 reason.
If you go to a Six Flags park, pay full price for parking and buy 3 meals without a meal plan, you might be a GP. That one's a good one.
What is that person living under a rock? What is membership these days, a nickel?
Ha, no, 6 cents. Get it? Six Flags? 6 cents?
You're actually a paid comedian? Reason number 7 why you might be a GP.
You might be a GP if you tried to bring a backpack, tent, cooking supplies, reading materials, a bark lounger recliner, and a chair massager, and a dog into the Millennium Force line.
I hear you can't even bring a cup into that line, right, Dave? Yeah, that's right, Paul. You get the death stare if you think about bringing a Tic Tac in that line. The number 6 reason why you might be a GP.
After entering the gates, if you immediately head to the coasters in the front of the park, you might be a GP.
Oh my! Head to the back of the park first. Nobody's back there. I thought everybody knew that. GP for sure. Say, Jeff, what's the number 5 reason that shows if someone's a GP?
If you let your offspring pee 1 foot off the midway while standing 10 feet away from a bathroom, you might be a redneck GP.
Oh, the combo, very funny. Yeah, that's disgusting. Apps show where the bathrooms are now. The number 4.
If you ask the ride operator why the boomerang coaster is only running 1 train that day, yeah, might be a special kind of GP.
Oh gosh, well, nothing much to say there. Number 3.
If you go to a park on Saturday in July and complain all day about the lines, parking, rides, bathrooms, and shows, you might be a GP.
Well, what did she expect? It's a Saturday. Number 2 reason.
If the first question about every single coaster is, didn't someone die on this? You might be a GP.
That's ridiculous, Dave. Everybody knows coasters are safer than the drive to the park. Come on, folks. Yeah, and an honorary mention question similar to that is, I heard that ride is sinking. Yeah, they built the coaster on quicksand, exactly. Perfect spot for a coaster. And the number 1 reason showing that you might be a GP is...
You tried bringing your baby on to the top little dragster queue, claiming, I'll just hold her on my lap.
Well, Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. There it is, ladies and gentlemen, your top 10 for the week. So that was pretty cool, Rue. Have you ever heard that before?
No, but you told me about it, and I was pretty excited to listen, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that Jeff Iboxworthy's a pretty funny dude, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess our fans, they've decided that Maverick was the winner as they're ahead by 1. So I think, do our votes count?
Yes, we have to vote now.
We have to vote now. All right, well, let's do it this way. Since you added last year all those 54-inch coasters, let's just talk about your top 5 at Cedar Point.
Okay.
And then there'll be 1 vote cast, and then I'll discuss mine after that. And then we'll see what the final tally is. All right, starting off, your number 5 coaster so far. Keeping in mind that there are still 2 54-inch coasters you haven't done, which are...
First one is Raptor.
Raptor, right?
And Rougarou.
Raptor and Rougarou. Haven't done those yet, so those don't get on the list. Funny enough, we didn't have any Rougarou votes, and no one mentioned Mantis either, so yeah.
Mantis is gone, dude. Wow.
I know, but still it could be in their heart. Well, disaster transport as well. Certainly in Wildcat.
And the observation tower.
The observation tower coaster. This isn't a list of rides, it's coasters, yes.
Yeah.
All right, so your number 5 coaster.
My number 5 coaster is Wicked Twister.
All right, so pretty high up, Wicked Twister. You said you didn't necessarily love it, but it's a good thrill, so some powerful launches. So that was your number 5. And number 4?
Number 4 is Valraven.
Valraven, which didn't get anyone's vote, but number 4 is pretty solid on the list. Fun ride with some cool elements. Your number 3?
Number 3 is Top Thrill Dragster.
With an incredible launch. So number 3, Top Thrill Dragster. So I think once you state what your number 2 is, everyone will realize what your number 1 is. So
my number 1 might be Cedar Creek Line, and you never know.
Oh, that's a good point. That is intense. All right, well.
I'm sorry.
Number 2.
But Maverick.
Number 2 is Maverick. So it is Cedar Creek Mine right at number 1?
Yes.
Oh, wow. So very good, Cedar.
Millennium Force is number 1.
Millennium Force is number 1, so that ties it up. All right, excellent.
You're the tiebreaker.
Well, unless my number 1 isn't either of those 2. Exactly.
Yeah.
What is it about Millennium Force that makes it your number 1?
I don't even know about you, so I'm kind of nervous.
Yeah, you should be nervous.
So Millennium Force was memorable We both got to ride it together. We were both a little nervous. And that was both our first Giga Coaster, right?
Yeah, undoubtedly our first, yeah.
Yep, so that was kind of memorable, and I can't find anything else. Do you find anything else that's kind of memorable with us in Millennium Force?
Well, that was a special day, and that first day when we went, that was really early May 2 years ago. And it was a beautiful, sunny, warm day that first day. And then the second day, it was sleeting and in the 30s in the morning and brutally cold. And so that first day was gorgeous and sunny, probably in the 60s. And we got there first thing in the morning, and it was just a beautiful day and a great ride and smooth and fast. So, yeah, so a lot of fun. And that'll be connected to our tip of the day. We'll talk about that a little bit later. For me and my favorite ride, certainly Top Thrill is my favorite moment. If you're going to talk about one element, one moment on a ride, Top Thrill would be number one for me in terms of just one moment. But as short as it is, it's hard for me to pick it as absolutely my favorite ride. But I still love the coaster. Maverick is a weird one. The first time I did Maverick, I was kind of underwhelmed. I had done I-305 before I had done Maverick. And so I-305, which has some of the similar feels to it, is so much more intense than Maverick. And so that might have made it a little bit less impressive in my eyes. Like a lot of people say, every time I do Maverick after that, I enjoy it more and more. So I think the first time I ever did it with you, we did it front row, I believe.
Yeah.
The first time we did Maverick. I wanted you to have that view.
Front row,
and waited a little bit longer.
And then the second time we did it a little further back.
Yeah, and so I like Maverick more and more and more all the time. But there's one particular reason why Millennium Force wins over Maverick for me, making it the winner of our poll, I suppose. Here is the reason. Night rides, especially night rides, but any time of the day, but night rides, and here's why. There's no other coaster that I've ever been on that comes close to the environment of that station before a ride. Because how are people acting in that station?
Oh, yeah, it's always very pumped off, and the hype is real.
It is. The people clapping, sometimes it's random clapping or a song. There's just energy. Even the ride ops who've been there all day, sometimes 12, 13, 14 hours, even they still at the end of the night are so excited. So that energy is just so cool. People are screaming, excited, and it's not only the station, but it's also the exit station. When people get off that, every single time there's clapping and excitement and energy, and that to me makes that ride just that much better. I think we might have mentioned it, but I-305, and you've been by the station, you haven't ridden it yet, and you will in about a month here. But I-305, what's the energy like in that station?
It's not that hyped up.
You can hear crickets in Intimidator 305. Fury a little bit more, but that energy, that intensity, and those night rides are beautiful. Seeing the lights, I like day rides, but night rides, the lights, and seeing all the rides, it's just incredible. And especially if you can see fireworks.
Voyage can't compare with that. Like Voyage and Millennium Force are both great night rides.
Yeah, Voyage is pretty insane because it is so dark back there, so you really can't see much. Terrific night rides, and that's to me what makes Millennium Force the top ride there. Congratulations, Millennium Force is the winner. And I know online there's a lot of controversy and a lot of people... That one might have showed up. I know online there's a lot of controversy with Millennium Force. That a lot of people say, oh, it's Millennium Force-less, that the airtime isn't that great, that it's just not as intense a ride. And you compare it to Fury, and it's a big difference. Fury has a decade and a half more technology, and it does a lot more things. But for what it is, Millennium Force still holds its speed so well. The tunnels, I think, add a lot to it, especially at night. It's just a fun ride, and that's what puts it on top for me. All right, so we're not going to discuss our multiple trips to Cedar Point like we do for our other visits. We're going to talk about that, I'm sure, a lot more when we do it for our Park of the Month, but just talk about a few special moments that we had last year. Our first trip was at the beginning of the summer, and we were so happy to meet our friends there, Steve, Daniela, and Luke, a family that we first met at the Coaster Radio meetup at Dollywood. They gave a couple of us a ride from the gate to our car, which, if you know Dollywood, it can be a really long walk if you don't take a tram. It was great to meet them there, and we spent a good amount of time with them there. And Cedar Point's their home park. And so we had Alex with us, and he wasn't 52 inches last year. And so it was really nice that Daniela was there and was very gracious to hang out with Alex, who couldn't do the 52-inch rides yet. And Andrew at that point had just reached 52 inches. So we got there first thing in the morning, and Cedar Point, by far, has the most 52-inch coasters in any other park. If you don't have kids, it's not something you really think about. But having 5 different 52-inch coasters, that's a rarity in the theme park world. And those are Gatekeeper, Wicked Twister, Valraven, Top Thrill Dragster, and Maverick. And so that way it made it cool that Andrew could do Top Thrill Dragster before King Ka. That 2-inch difference is pretty big there. So we got there pretty early and we decided to ride Gatekeeper first since it was right there. And so your thoughts on Gatekeeper? We rode kind of middle of the train.
Yeah, it's a nice coaster for starters. BNN. The drop is very unique.
That wing over the top, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But it's nice. It has a cool element with the leg choppers.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And the towers and all that. Yeah.
And it's nothing special, but it's okay if you're looking forward to it.
And I think that's a good point, that it's a good ride for a beginner, someone who's a little bit nervous, especially nervous about inversions. It really is a smooth, graceful coaster. Yeah. Not bad for a kind of skittish, nervous rider who wants to do inversions, and have your feet dangling with the wing coaster is kind of a nice feel to it. And you got a beautiful view up that lift hill.
Beautiful view of the ocean, it's a beautiful view of the lake.
Now, if you had a view of the ocean, that would be impressive.
Yeah.
That'd be one tall coaster from there.
Yep. But yeah, it's a good coaster. And I like it.
And it was nice. We got on with absolutely no wait at that point, so that was nice to jump on that quickly. Next, we headed over to Valraven, which at that point still didn't have that long of a line.
No. It had a 20-minute wait.
20 minute, which isn't bad for Valraven that early on in its creation, so that wasn't too bad. And for your first ride, were we able to do front row?
Yes, we did front row.
Yeah. And so Valraven compared to Gatekeeper, for you, Valraven far superior?
Not far, because Valraven's a lot shorter. But it would definitely take it with some of the loops and the dive. But yeah, they're not that far off.
Okay, so that's interesting. A little bit more intense for Valraven versus a much longer ride for Gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's an interesting way to look at it. And the 2 dives were really good there. Yeah. Well, next we headed over to Top Thrill Dragster. And by this time, the wait might have been 20 to 30 minutes in there. And this is one I was really excited about Andrew getting on. Because you talked about it before with Backlot Stunt Coaster. If this is how fast this feels, it's hard to imagine what like more than double the speed on Top Thrill is like.
A lot more than double.
And so we got in the line with Steve and Luke, who were in front of us, and they were on a train before us. And
the one right ahead of us.
Right ahead of us, exactly. And so my thought was, for the first time, Andrew, doing this, I wanted to get front row so we had that view. And so the front row line was a lot longer, and it might have been a good 20 minutes longer than the other rows. And so finally Andrew was like, I don't think we need to wait that much longer and have everyone wait for us.
And I kind of thought like, this coaster breaks down a lot, so let's not take the chances and wait longer and maybe have it break down when we can go in a shorter line and we might be able to ride it quicker.
So yeah, that was a really good discussion we had about what happens if it does go down and then we would have missed out or make other people wait. So that was a great decision. So we were middle of the train, I'd say. Yeah. So we got in and things were going fine. We're next in line. And how are you feeling at that point?
I'm not scared because I don't get scared. But my heart was beating. I was more excited than nervous, but yeah, I was feeling it.
That first time. And still, I mean, I've done Top Thrill maybe 4 times. Well, I've done it a couple more times than that.
No.
I did it with Mama at least.
Once.
You think?
Once. Yeah. I saw you only do it once.
And then King Ka I've done probably 3 times by now. It's still very exciting sitting there and waiting. And that's the interesting thing about King Ka versus Top Thrill. King Ka, the line, the way it works is, and the way they let people into the station, the line for the front row is never longer than other lines. So it's going to be interesting when we get there in March and you try King Ka. I'm psyched for you to see that. Excited, hearts beating. What did you think of that launch?
Oh, it's crazy. Did you post the picture of my face on the first launch yet?
I'm going to post those pics when we release the episode.
That was so crazy. It felt like my cheeks were like the back of my head. I'm like, I just did I did one of the faces where, like, your cheeks are flapping in the air and then, like, your two teeth are grinded together.
And you see some of that video footage, like, of Bert the Conqueror, when they show sort of slow motion on Top Thrill that people's faces just ripple in waves because it's that extreme of a rush. Now, the crazy part is the drop. When you compare that drop from the top, isn't that the weird thing about it? Like, what freaked me out about Top Thrill is I always thought that drop from 450 feet on a coaster straight down was going to be crazy. But it's nothing at all, right?
No. It feels like kind of an airtime hill on Millennium Force. Or, even though I haven't rated it, the airtime hill at the end on Kinda, I'm sure it would feel like that.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. And that's why people who are nervous about Top Thrill, I wish I could just have like a seminar with all of them and ensure them it's really not as scary as it looks. The launch is a little intense and gets your gut, but then just before you start going up, the catch car releases, the cable releases, you head up the hill, and that's nothing intense to the going up. And then you're at the top and you're looking for like a second. You don't have time to look around and see how high you are. I know people who are afraid of heights are like, oh, I would never do it, it's too high. But you don't have time to look around. And then again, that drop compared to a coaster drop is nothing. Millennium Force drop is way more intense than that.
I would say it's boring if it's just a coaster like that.
Yeah, it's a boring element, that drop. It's crazy to think that that's true, but it gives no forces whatsoever.
Yeah, but like, it's not scary at all. Like, let's say there's a 4-year-old who is tall enough, and we just skipped the launch for him, and then he just went up the hill and down. I bet he would say that it's not scary.
No, not scary at all, exactly. So it's weird that way. So we came into the brake run, and your thought, what were you thinking as we finished?
I was just happy and very excited.
Finally did it.
Yes, and my heart was pounding, and I was like, whoa, my face on that launch.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. So we get to our holding spot in the train just after the brake run, and then what happens?
I called it. We got stuck.
We got stuck. And so for whatever reason, some kind of mechanical failure, and we got stuck there. And at that point, it was sunny, it was getting kind of warm, right? And so we are so close to the exit, you can see just 20 feet in front of us. If the train could have pulled up, we would have been able to get off, but we were just kind of stuck there for a while. And Steve and Luke are just kind of looking at us like, oh well, but if we didn't make that switch, we wouldn't have gone on at that point.
I thought you'd like if I didn't tell you, oh, well, this is kind of long, so we should go in a different route.
It was the brilliant decision. So at that point, the family, they decided to head to the water park to check out the new Cedar Point shores. It might have been one of their first times going there. And so the three of us who were there alone then did all the rides that Alex could do. We headed over, I'm sure, to Millennium Force next. That had to have been what we did.
Yeah, that was what we did.
Yeah. We didn't wind up doing Maverick until our next visit to the park when we came, I think, with Mama, so that we were able to do Maverick together then. So just a couple of interesting things from that trip. At one point, we were near Maverick, and if you friend Tony Clark at Tony Clark with Cedar Point, he gives away each day, or someone from his department, a commemorative coin. Steve and Luke were very helpful 2 years ago when we went with them, and they helped us get, do you remember what the coin was 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was like Valraven.
Yeah, very good. It was Valraven, and that's where Andrew met Tony Clark and was able to get a coin, so we had a Valraven coin. And so then last year, do you remember what the coin was for last year? With the water park opening, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it was the Cedar Point Shores coin. And so we got the tweet when we were by Maverick, and it said, meet us at the railroad station by Rougarou. But no running. He always says no running. He doesn't want anyone to be in danger. So very, very, very quickly, I think we didn't run over, right? We took the train. Did we take the train, or did we walk quickly?
We walked quickly.
We walked quickly because we didn't know when the next train was coming. So we huffed over there, and it was Tony's intern who was there, and we got the last coin for that day. So holy cow, did that work out well. So that was really cool to get a coin, and I had a picture that we'll post up on the Facebook post for this episode of you guys getting the last coin, which was awesome. And then we learned something very cool, and that might have been from Steve and Luke and Daniela as well, about, do you remember the special sort of service that you could get on the trains? Yeah.
I could say that it's your first time there.
Your first time at the railroad, exactly. Or first time at the park and first time doing the railroad. And then what would they do?
And then they would give you a hat and a button.
Yeah, so you get a conductor's hat, a sort of gray and white striped conductor's classic hat, and then a button that you can wear as well.
A Peanuts button.
A Peanuts. Peanuts?
Yeah.
Like the characters, Peanuts. Like
Yes.
Snoopy, yes.
And Linus.
And Linus and Pigpen and yeah.
the-
So that's kind of neat and a great little tip there that if you're going with kids, talk to the conductors or anyone who's in line working there and let them know and they'll hook you up with that. That's pretty cool. And sometimes even they'll say, oh, we have newbies on board, you know, that kind of thing. So that was kind of a cool experience and something that you can take home and keep as a keepsake. So that was pretty neat. So on another trip later in the year, that's when we came back with Melissa and we were able to get onto Wicked Twister and Maverick. And so that first time you were done with Maverick, what was your thought about that? How did you feel about it?
I loved it. I was like, how do I compare this one with Millennium Force? Which one do I like better? I kind of like to say that they're tied, but, you know, I can't say that because I have to pick one. But yeah, I loved it. It was so intense, and the turns were great. It's just an all-around great coaster.
And I thought for a little bit after you did that, you even placed that ahead of Millennium Force for a while.
Yeah.
But it's a tough call. Again, they're such different experiences. And it was neat on that, kind of sad, but neat. If you remember, on that second day we went 2 years ago, do you remember what happened to Maverick when we got there and it was blizzarding and windy?
It derailed.
Oh, derailed would be bad.
It rallied.
How is this a rally? Rallied. I'm making a scooping motion of showing like a letter U. So it did what?
It rallied?
It rallied. Yes. Right before that last inversion, before the tunnel, that's where it didn't make it through the inversion, rolled back, and we were like, uh-oh. And that's where we were filming it at that point. And we even sent it into Clint's In the Loop live show that he had for a little while with Reese and Randall and sent it into that show. So yeah, terrific ride. And if the line's not too crazy, it's just so fun and so worth it. So we'll talk about Cedar Point much more, especially this spring when we try to get there for an early Steel Inventions ride. One other thing with Ohio I want to talk about now with Kings Island, two different experiences with Kings Island, two new experiences for us. Last year we went to Kings Island, I think twice as well. Once was the day after Hollywood Nights. On that Sunday from Hollywood Nights, a lot of us went to Kings Island, which is conveniently on the drive back to the northeast from there. So we went there that day, and then we went another time later on in the summer. Melissa had a convention in Columbus that lasted 3 or 4 days, a greenhouse and bioresource engineering convention. And so we got to go to Columbus, and it was really the first time spending time in Columbus as opposed to just driving through. And it was such a great chance to see our good friend Chris Rankin from Coaster Radio, and we got to meet him and his family at a really cool farmers market in Columbus for the first day and have breakfast with them. Really cool place. The city itself is just so impressive. We kind of think of it as a much larger Ithaca. Had a lot of diversity to it, a lot of great outdoor areas along the river. A lot of good restaurants. We went to that science museum, that kids' science museum, which was just terrific. A lot of hands-on things. And we got to spend a night at Chris's house after we were done with the convention and the hotel that we had there. And it was just so great being able to hang out with him and spend some time with him, work on some wooden models. He likes doing Legos and other sort of wooden puzzles and wooden roller coasters, which Alex absolutely loves to do. So it was great being able to see him and spend some time with him, even though we didn't get to Kings Island with him that day. He was working all that week. So the two things that we want to talk about with Kings Island. On that first trip, we were able to do two unique experiences. First of all, Mystic Timbers, and then second of all, their only 52-inch coaster, which was
Banshee!
So first of all, Mystic Timbers. The first couple of times we went, there were some mechanical issues where it took us a while to get on. That line crept because we were stopped a few times. And I think towards the end of the season, they were able to iron out a lot of those problems. Mystic Timbers. First of all, the video is kind of weird. It's the same how short it is. That sort of fake video footage of someone in the woods and hearing something, and then it going to static. I wish that was a little bit longer. But the truck out front looked awesome. I like the queue and the way the queue looked, and the cars look great as well. So your thoughts the first time you were done with Mystic Timbers, what did you think?
I loved it. It was a very jam-packed coaster with a lot of really good elements. It was like racing with the water ride.
Oh, yeah, that goes underneath.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was, you could smell it a lot, though. Like, smell the water.
Oh, smell the water. That's interesting, because also there was that strong smell of, I think the chain grease is really strong at Mystic Timbers. Where some rides, wooden coasters, you kind of smell it a little. There, that whole, each time we went, it might have been 3 separate occasions. That's right. It was one for the Hollywood Nights. Another time we went heading out to, on that Kentucky, Missouri trip. And then we went once later as well. And so you really have that sense of smell there. The problem for me with Mystic Timbers, and it was more about timing that first time. After Hollywood Nights, when you do Raven, Legend, and The Voyage, which are 3 crazily intense coasters, which are physical experiences. When you've done those 3 and then you do Mystic Timbers that first time felt like a junior coaster. It really did. It was so mild in comparison. I do like the fact that it changes direction all the time. You're really not going on much straight track until the end of the brake run. I thought it was fun. Airtime I didn't think was anything too intense. I think I'm the opposite of a lot of people with how they felt. I was a little underwhelmed with the coaster, even though I really liked it. It was super smooth, and that's why Melissa loved it. A lot of wooden coasters Melissa doesn't like. She does not like rough coasters. It jars her head. She feels uncomfortable and doesn't like it. Over time, I'm getting more and more used to rougher coasters. And so the coaster itself, loved it, super smooth, fun elements, a fun coaster, but nothing crazily intense. Now, with the shed itself, what did you think the first time you did the shed?
I loved the shed. I was like looking around a lot, saying, oh, will something pop out and scare me? But it had a lot of theming. It didn't disappoint my expectations. It reached my expectations.
Well, that's funny that you say that word disappoint, because a lot of people did that joke online. From the What's in the Shed campaign that was from the year before, everyone was speculating on what was going to be. Gigantic animatronic trees and
Drop
monsters
track.
coming out. Drop track, all this craziness. And then after the first weekend, everyone posted stuff like, What's in the Shed? Disappointment. Wah, wah, wah. You know, all those kind of funny jokes. To me, I loved the shed. How many other coasters have post-ride shows at all at Cedar Fair or Six Flags parks? So while that might not have been as crazy as some people wanted, is it better just to be in a hot, sunny brake run with looking at nothing? I thought a lot of the touches were cool, where they wrote on the wood in marker, you know,
Don't spoil it.
well, I mean, by now, if you know coasters, and I'm not going to spoil entirely, but the fact that they have, like, handwritten stuff like, don't go in there, beware the shed, it was a nice touch.
There are, like, speakers saying, don't go in the shed, and then they would, like, fade out, like, glitching and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like there was a technical problem. And then the radio is like that comic relief when the radio comes on and plays some of the 80s cheesy songs. I thought that was a great touch, hilarious. And then the lights kind of go on and off. Fine, the projections themselves might not have been great, but still, compared to nothing, I thought it was awesome. Did you think it was going to be a Disney or a Universal level of theming that was in there?
I would say no.
Exactly. So it was never going to be that, and I never expected it to be that. But does it add a good amount to already a good coaster? I thought it was great.
Who knows? We've never been to Disney or Universal, so.
So you wouldn't know. You know nothing about it. Good point. The ride, not as incredible as I think a lot of people thought, but the shed, liked it a lot more than most people. Fun ride. And again, I think like Maverick, each time I did it, I liked it more and more and more, especially the other times not having the Holiday World coasters to compare it to. Then the only other thing to talk about this time with Kings Island was the Banshee experience. And this is one of the top, I'd say 10 52-inch coasters I was really excited about Andrew getting on, maybe top 5, because it is my favorite invert. And so the first time, line wasn't too long, and I really wanted to get you on the front row. And so I think we did it twice, right? You did once front row, once back row. I think that's what we did. And got front row, I wanted you to have those visuals and see it. And we got off the ride, and what was your feeling about it?
I liked it. It wasn't killer. I didn't love it, but I liked it. It kind of hurt my legs a little because where the bottom of the cars were, it like was hitting my leg a little, and that hurt. But yeah, I liked it.
Okay, not thinking of you with a shorter leg length, that it hits you in a different spot than it would an adult. Okay.
Yeah, but I would prefer more intense loops and corkscrews than just meandering and stuff.
So that's interesting. So you compare the loops more to like Gatekeeper, that they were graceful and slow moving as opposed to quick.
Like Maverick.
If you like that more, it's possible that you'll like Batman better than Banshee. That's possible. Batman, which has very fast, quick inversions as opposed to slow and graceful ones. So yeah, that's an interesting thought that you might like Batman better.
Yeah.
So I had such high hopes that you were going to love it that much, but you just found it to be a good ride. You'd put it above Gatekeeper?
Yeah, probably.
All right, so maybe as you get taller and it's more comfortable for your legs, you'll like it more possibly. Okay. And I'll never forget, as we were leaving the Banshee ride after that first time, we were heading over towards the Fest House and the front of the park as we had to meet some other people, maybe over by the Kids Land. And I asked you, because I could tell how you felt about the ride. I said, oh, so it was kind of a letdown for you? And your answer was?
No, it just wasn't a light up.
And I thought that was such a unique, original saying. Not a letdown. You weren't sad by it. It didn't disappoint you, but it didn't overreach your expectations or anything like that.
Nope, it didn't.
But if we went back to Kings Island, you would ride it?
I would do it. I would do it. But I wouldn't like do it over and over again because it's not worth doing it over and over again. I mean, you can do it 4 times in a row and then you can move on to other stuff.
Yeah. So it's not an all-day attraction.
No, it isn't.
Okay, what a memory. So way back in episode 2 last May, Andrew gave his top 10 coasters at that point before he was able to ride any 52-inch coasters. So it'll be interesting to see how much his list has changed now. So if you haven't listened to episode 2, we'll just give it now very quickly with what his top 10 was back then.
Number 10, Twister.
At
Knobles.
Number 9,
Backlot Stone Coaster.
at Anywhere. Number 8 was?
Daredevil Dive at Six Flags Over Georgia.
Nice.
Number 7, Wild Eagle at Dollywood. Number 6, Phoenix at Knobles. Number 5, Mystery Mine at Dollywood. Number 4, Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. Number 3, Lightning Rod at Dollywood. Number 2, Millennium Force. And number 1, El Toro.
Okay, so there was his old top 10 at the beginning of last year. And so now let's take a look at the newly updated top 10. And this is now out of 188 coasters that Andrew is now at. It'll be interesting to see, that's for future discussion, what you're going to make number 200. Kind of an important choice, right?
Ooh.
That is an ooh. So we shall see. At number 10,
we have Verbolten at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg.
wow, Verbolten. Couple of things that you really loved about Verbolten.
Oh, the drop.
The drop track, okay.
Inside part, it's really intense.
Inside part, intense and much longer than anyone would imagine. Okay.
And the drop out of the building.
And drop out of the building and drop
Water.
down from the river. Right. Down to the river before the final brake run. An excellent last drop. Okay. New to the list, number 10 at Verbolten. Number 9.
Boulder Dash at
Lake Compounds.
Lake Compounds.
All right. What couple things makes Boulder Dash move into your top 10?
The amazing intense part in the woods.
Remind you of Voyage a little bit?
Yeah, it does. Although it's more like on the edge of the cliff, not going through.
Oh, yeah. I just meant in terms of the way the ride felt.
Yeah.
But you're right, exactly. And that's something we'll talk about in a future episode, going to Lake Compounds with our good friends Brian and Julie. So, an excellent ride.
Number 8, Top Thrill Dragster.
Where's that? I've never heard of that.
I forgot. Did we talk about it in this episode?
I don't think I've ever heard of that coaster. Top Thrill Dragster.
Isn't it that really fast coaster?
No, I think it's actually the world's slowest coaster. I think literally a snail beats that coaster. So it's the irony of the name, Top Thrill Dragster, when it's like the sloths in that movie, what was that, Zootopia?
Yeah.
So top thrill, number 8.
Number 7, The Voyage.
Interesting. Number 7, The Voyage. So we've got 2 intense wooden coasters that have moved up into the list. So number 7, The Voyage. And I think it's possible that Alex might have even liked it a little bit more than you did. But so The Voyage, couple things about The Voyage that makes it move up to the list?
It's intense part in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
It's banked turns.
Yep.
And just the overall coaster is just great.
Hard to argue with that. Number 6.
The Legend.
Sharing its connection with number 7 with 2 Holiday World together. And what about Legend just barely ekes it out over The Voyage? I know that was a tough choice for you.
Yeah, I like its bang turns and fast drops to the ground. This coaster is more like it'll go down once and then up, and it'll have a fast intense part, and then it'll go back down. And then I just like its intenseness, and the helix is great.
Yeah. And it never stops moving in a different direction. It's amazing like that. And not only that, but what special appreciation do you have for the Legend in terms of...
They have, at Halloween Nights, they have a special thing where there's like teams of 4 or 5, I think. And then you sign up, and it's where you have a pretty big cup of water, and by the end your group has to have the most amount of water in their cups. So, and my team was the winner.
Yes, and so the Water Cup Challenge that afforded you a free ticket to Hollywood Nights next year. Yep. So that's pretty cool. Thank you, Ho-Oh-Po. Appreciate that. So that's a pretty awesome connection that you'll always have with the Legend.
Number 5, Apollo's Chariot.
All right, your first B&M Hyper, which we talked about on that episode a while back. And again, 1 or 2 reasons why Apollo's Chariot goes that high up on your list.
The dive down to the lake.
Yep.
The low helix part to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then that whip turn right after the brake run.
That quick left right,
yes.
Which is so well done. So interesting that a B&M Hyper goes that high on the list.
Yes.
And next year, boy, you do a lot more B&M Hypers after that.
Number 4, Lightning Rod at Dollywood.
All right, so looking at that, Lightning Rod goes from number 3 to number 4, changing on this list. And it's been a couple years now since we've done it.
Yep.
But the Lightning Rod's still up there, loving that launch and the intensity. So that means number 2...
Millennium Force.
Number 2 with Millennium Force. And where's that?
That's... I feel like it's the same place that Top Thrill Dragster
Well,
was.
I guess that means I've never been to that park.
I don't know. I'm just guessing it's maybe like King's Dominion.
Yeah, it's possible.
Guessing.
Where's that? I don't know.
I don't know.
Millennium Force, wherever that is, number 2. And then finally, it means staying in first place.
Oh, please! El Toro.
El Toro, which is the name of your...
Bull.
Name of your bull? You have a bull? Well, the connection to this weekend, it's the name of what for this weekend?
I have a Pinewood Derby coming up for my Cub Scout troop, and it's going to be named El Toro.
That race coming up this weekend, and you've painted it. Which color? Was it red and yellow?
It's red and white.
Red and white?
Red with white stripes.
Nice bull sticker on the front.
Yep.
And
it's going to be in the middle, it's going to be painted El Toro.
So the question is it truly still your favorite ride, or is it because it was your first big coaster, our first big coaster, that led us to love this hobby?
Both. It's both.
Okay, so it still is your favorite ride, you would still say.
It's just so intense, fast. It has everything you need to make a coaster. It's intenseness. Like, it'll take a lot of things from many different coasters. It'll take, like, airtime of B&M Apollo's Chariot. It'll take intensity of Maverick, Boulder Dash, Voyage. Yeah. And it'll take fast whips from Sky Rush and I-305. And it'll just take bunny hops from Phantom's Revenge.
That's a good connection, connecting all those. I love that. That's brilliant thoughts right off the top of your head. And I'm going to be very interested to see if we ever find a coaster with a better first drop. At this point, I don't think anything has come close in terms of as intense a first drop. You've done Millennium Force, which is plenty taller than El Toro, but El Toro's first drop is just so much more intense, especially in that back row. So that means, comparing the two top 10 lists, we only had 3 coasters that survived. El Toro, Millennium Force, and Lightning Rod. That top 3 that stayed the same, and then all the other coasters dropped off. Sad to see Knoebels shut out of that list, and also sad for me to see Wicked Cyclone drop off, since that's such a favorite of mine. But there is the new top 10 list. I have a feeling, just thinking about this, that after 2018 is done, this top 10 list might change a lot again.
Yes.
With a lot more coasters going to happen for you this year. Since the episode is already so incredibly long, we're going to skip our ride of the day since we've discussed so many rides already today.
Yeah, we'll do that next episode.
But I think for our tip of the day, it'll be sort of connected to what we've been talking about.
Tip of the day, tip of the day. It's the tip of the day. Tip of the day, tip of the day. It's the tip of the day.
Yeah.
And my tip of the day is for Millennium Force, which so many people go to, and some people maybe haven't gone to yet, but are going to go to it in the future. And so here is what we've done every time. Andrew and I did it the first time. After that, he always loves the back. But Alex, who the first year was very, very nervous about Millennium Force and loved it, but still has it in his head that the back of a train's always scarier. So, which row in Millennium Force do we always do?
We do the back row.
We do the back row. Now, with Alex, the good choice is, do you remember which row?
Bribe them with candy.
Well, bribe with candy. Well, that's how we got him in the back row, and now he'll do it in any row. But the longest line for Millennium Force is always which row?
Front row.
Front row.
It's almost out of the station sometimes.
Sometimes, right. It's crazy. It'll back up all the way, and they have to wait until they can send more people in. So, yes, sometimes it's way too long. So, instead of going front row with Alex and with you the first time, do you remember which row we do instead that's almost?
Second row?
So the great part about it is second row has the same line as any other row after the first row. So here's the advice for our tip of the day. If you go second row, the second row in the train is elevated a little bit over the first one. And so you can still have the great view of that first drop and see all the elements in front of you without the wait. So if you get there first thing in the day, you can get front row pretty easily. Other than that, that front line's going to be busy. So to get the benefits of the front row without the wait, second row Millennium Force, you're going to have that same view as long as you're not super short or a young child who just got to 48 inches, but it's easier to see. So second row, the way to go for our tip of the week. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this extra long episode as we had so much to talk about with our Ohio trips. And thank again to Steve and Daniela and Luke and the Rankin family for making us so comfortable on our trips, and Chris for opening up your house to us. It was great to get there, and we hope to see you more next year. Our next episode will be coming out pretty soon, so stay in touch to find out when that's going to come out and what it's going to be about. Interesting to see which topic we pick, as we have plenty more coming up here. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Theme Park Fam. Thanks so much for listening, and an extra special thank you to everyone who participated in our second TPF Quest. We really appreciate it, and it was great to see so many people turn out for that. In the world of roller coasters, you know Cedar Point has clout.
We'll be there for opening weekend. Steel Vengeance is on. Andrew out.